Do you remember that season of BoJack Horseman, where BoJack signed up for a show called Philbert? A dark and grimy crime show that aimed to parody all the prestige dramas that were coming out at the time, with awful protagonists that the audience weren't meant to root for but did. Well, imagine a show that felt just like that parody, but without any other self-awareness. That show is HBO's The Idol. The Idol focuses on an aspiring pop idol, played by Lily Rose Depp, and her complex relationship with a weirdo played by The Weeknd. Now, his character is dreadful. He is the epitome of toxic masculinity and an all-round bad guy. But the show is so stupid, so blind, that it presents him as someone we're meant to root for. This show is toothless. It's all edge and no substance. It's as though it attempted to emulate the style and atmosphere of Philbert, without being aware that Philbert was a parody and a piece of social commentary. Now, there are 4 main points in this video that I want to address. How The Idol promotes toxic masculinity without the social commentary that Philbert has. The way it portrays women, the awful acting of The Weeknd, and what we were meant to learn from Philbert that The Idol so massively misses the mark on. Now, one thing The Idol does is glorify and romanticize toxic masculinity. Sam Levinson, the director of The Idol and creator of Euphoria, always does stuff like this. He is known by this point for failing to understand female characters, except as sex objects. He is basically Flip MacGyver, the creator of Philbert. Both of them portray female characters as one-dimensional. They both reduce women to mere objects and stereotypes. Both The Idol and Philbert glorify and condone the behaviour of its male characters, who embody a distorted and harmful form of masculinity. This endorsement of toxic masculinity not only perpetuates damaging stereotypes, but it undermines any potential for genuine character growth or meaningful storytelling. Flip would love The Idol. It's exactly the kind of show he wanted to make. It's quite upsetting to see the way The Idol utilises its female characters to endorse and normalise disturbingly misogynistic scenes and dialogue. It echoes the scene in BoJack Horseman when Flip dismissively instructs Diane that her role as a writer on the show is merely a facade, aimed at giving the appearance of inclusivity and gender equality. The showrunners seem to believe that including a female name in the credits is sufficient to deflect accusations of misogyny, but it only serves to mask the underlying issues and perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Just because you get a woman to play the role you've written in your crappy script, it doesn't mean it's not sexist or wrong. While we're on the subject of female characters, I want to talk a little about what The Idol does with Lily Rose Depp's character. You see, her character is nothing but a shell. It's not a well-rounded character, it's shallow and exists only to serve as an accessory to a male-driven narrative. The Idol perpetuates a troubling pattern of objectifying women, as it relies on gratuitous sexualization using female characters as vehicles for titillation rather than exploring their individuality. This show reduces women to mere objects of desire, often making Lily Rose Depp wear as little to no clothes as he can possibly get away with for no good reason. The first episode is nothing more than a disjointed sequence of nudity, erotic dancing, and sensual music, devoid of any real purpose or substance. There are blatant parallels between The Idol and Philbert in terms of misogyny. Flip MacGyver, the creator of Philbert, is known for his lack of understanding of female characters, and so is the maker of The Idol. If you've seen Euphoria, you know that Levinson does not know how to write for women, and the opening scene of The Idol serves as all the proof we need that she is in this show for one reason and one reason only: as an object. If you haven't seen the show, the first scene has Lily Rose Depp sat in lingerie, as the photographer tells her which emotions to portray. Be happy, be sad, be vulnerable, and she changes her facial expression accordingly. Now, in a better written show, I'd say that this is addressing how women are seen as objects rather than real people in Hollywood. But the show does exactly that. It exploits her, using her as an object to draw in viewers. It's almost as though they were this close to actually making some decent social commentary, but were too stupid to aim for the green. The ball is in the water. They missed. Now, one of the loudest pieces of criticism for this show is about the awful acting skills of The Weeknd. I'm not going to call him The Weeknd in this video because that's a ridiculous name. I feel like we're just feeding his ego by calling him that. Let's call him by his real name, Abel. Abel cannot act. Every scene with him in is painful to watch. He struggles to be convincing. And it's clear that he truly believes he's doing a good job, but unfortunately the reality couldn't be further from the truth. Every scene with him in is cringe. He can't deliver a single line convincingly. Now, I realise that the script is crap, so he's reading drivel anyway. But even with a competent scriptwriter, I genuinely don't believe he'd do a good job. Now, we're not talking Tommy Wiseau levels of acting. When it came to Tommy in the room, he played the character like he had never spoken to another human being before, like he was some sort of alien. But Abel is worse than that. His acting is something I can only describe as Coronation Street acting. Right, there's a character in Corrie named Aaron, and every scene he's in, he looks like he doesn't want to be there. He acts like he's too good for the role. That's what Abel is like. Except his show has been given a HBO budget, so the entire world has to see it rather than just old people watching Corrie. How did he get cast in this role? There must have been an audition process. And more importantly, who was it who told him that he could act? He must have at least seen some of the scenes played back to him during filming, and yet despite the glaring evidence to the contrary, he remains convinced that he is a competent actor. Like Jared Leto, who delivered a god-awful Joker performance whilst also acting like a prick on set. Abel has also gotten himself a bit of a reputation for it. He's apparently awful to work with reports of him cancelling shoots at the last second and causing disruptions. He's unprofessional. If you're going to be a diva, at least make sure you have the skill to back it up. The character is fundamentally uninteresting. It's basically the character BoJack played in Philbert. Which is all the more amazing because in BoJack Horseman, Diane talks about how she doesn't want the character to be idolised by awful people who want to feel better about themselves. Abel's character is unironically this. He's awful, and they glamorise it. So why does The Idol bear such a striking resemblance to Philbert? I think the answer lies in the fact that Philbert serves as a satirical take on the abundance of formulaic and mindless TV that floods our TV screens year after year. Philbert cleverly parodies the repetitive nature of these shows, often featuring a male lead alongside a talented actress who deserves more recognition. Philbert doesn't specifically target any one show. Rather, it satirises the overall state of TV over the past few decades. It takes aim at all the dark and gritty crime shows, the excessive use of nudity and the objectification of women through the male gaze, as well as the rise of villainous protagonist narratives. These are shows that often attract a misguided fandom that idolises these morally corrupt characters, and also capitalise on the problematic public personas of the talent involved. I hope that nobody has fallen for this show, and likes it enough to think that its characters are anything to aim to be like. But if there's anything I've learned from the internet, it's that there are losers out there who will actually look up to this pathetic representation of a man. The era of TV that Philbert satirises existed before the inception of BoJack Horseman, but it reached a point of popularity during the time when the Philbert season aired. Since then, this trend has gradually faded away. However, with the emergence of The Idol, it seems like we're regressing back to an era of TV that should have been left behind. In BoJack Horseman, the show Philbert received substantial acclaim from fans, despite BoJack portraying a deeply flawed human being. Philbert was a parody, but unfortunately, the idol fails to grasp any lessons we learned from it because it lacks the self-awareness of it being a parody. It merely exists on a superficial level, devoid of the commentary of Philbert. This show is completely toothless, like a pizza cutter. It's all edge and no point. The idol makes a strategic move to control the narrative surrounding its reception, employing a tactic to preempt criticism. The show includes scenes where characters engage in discussions about negative opinions towards the show. This tactic is reminiscent of similar strategies employed by She-Hulk and Ghostbusters 2016. Both of those sought to deflect blame onto specific groups or shift the conversation away from genuine criticism. The show had a few characters stand outside when Jocelyn was having a photo shoot. One guy, who was dubbed a college-educated internet person, questions if it's okay to romanticize how broken Jocelyn is as a person, to which another person replies, "Will you stop trying to cockblock America? Let them enjoy sex, drugs and rock and roll." It's as though they knew people wouldn't like this show for being terrible, so they tried to get ahead of it and reshape the conversation so they were in control and make us look like the idiots for not enjoying it. The writers are not smart enough to get away with something like this, and I'm sick of them preempting criticism. It's an attempt to redefine the narrative by positioning itself as a victim of narrow-minded viewers. This does nothing but undermine meaningful dialogue about the show. So yeah, ultimately this show is nothing but Philbert, without the social commentary. Ironically, this show is so dark at times you can't even see what's going on, and all I can think of it when I'm watching it is Flip saying, "The darkness is a metaphor for darkness." I wouldn't watch The Idol if I was you. Avoid it. It just adheres to the formulaic structure of angsty dramas and fails to deliver anything new. It is basically a parody of the genre without any of the self-awareness. How they made an example of the very trend that Philbert sought to parody years after they parodied it is ridiculous. Thankfully, this show will never get a season 2. They shouldn't even air the rest of the episodes, just let it be a piece of lost media. Because I assure you, it'll be the one piece of lost media that nobody ever tries to find. Right, subscribe if you can. We're trying to make it to 3K, so help us out with that. Right, I'll let you go. Bye.